Okay. Let me get my earphones here. Let me make Jeff. So Jeff, I made you a co-host.
Great, thanks.
Hey, and I do have a couple of slides, not a lot, but if I think you mentioned in your email that you could.
Yes, I will make you a co-host too. I believe I now have that power. I don't, but Pete does. Mark, are you using any slides or media?
Hey, good evening, Jeff. Hey, guys. No, I'm all set to go. So
Okay,
whenever
great.
you're ready for me, I'm ready.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So Pete, can you hear me?
Let me make you a co-host.
Hey, Pete.
Let me see if I'll just experiment and see if it allows me to.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Great.
cool. All right.
And Megan, I'm excited to be on my first panel with you. So it's good to see you tonight.
Yeah, you too.
I feel like by the time I understand Zoom, it'll be over.
Ourselves and ladies and gentlemen, we do have an announcement. The Culver City Democratic Club is proud to announce. Let me continue this. There we go. We are proud to announce a very special fundraising event that will take place on Friday, June 4th at 7 p.m. Be there. By there, I mean home, by your computer or any device that will be able to see. We are selling a limited amount of tickets to one of the first virtual performances of a new play. Susan?
Mm-hmm. The new play is inspired by Studs Terkel's classic, Hard Times, an oral history of the Great Depression. And it's produced by one of our Culver City theaters, the Actors Gang, and directed by its artistic. And there will also immediately following the
It is going to event again. It is on 7 p.m. Mere 50 have I think we already have in the chat, and the ActBlue link have been posted on our club's Facebook page as well. We're posting links to Facebook and ActBlue in the chat this evening. In fact, we may have already been doing that. So thank you so much to Jeff, to Kareem for putting this together, to Susan Obrow, to oh, that's right, for putting it. I'm sorry, Gina
Gina Harris.
Gina Harris, yes. Gina Harris has put that I'm losing my brains right now, but she has set up our Act Blue page for that at a moment's notice between working, meetings, and working. So thank you so much to all of you who are working hard to put this together. It's going to be a great event. And again, the talkback should be fantastic. Anything else, Susan?
No, that's it.
Buy your tickets. We're going to be putting the link up a number of times, and so please just click on it, go to the Facebook page, and tell your friends. And it's going to be a great event. And of course, it's a fundraiser for our club.
And how many tickets are available?
Well, as of this moment, probably fewer than we had before, but I know we had originally ordered
Yes, 60.
60 tickets. If we sell out, hopefully there will be more available, but we know it's going to sell out fast. I guess back to you, Jeff.
Great, thanks. Yeah, the two of you worked really hard to put this together, and I'm so excited that it's come to fruition. I think it's going to be a great event. I also wanted to add that this is a live performance, that they're going to do several live ones and then a film, and then people will be able to do the pay-per-view. So we will be among the lucky few who get to see it in real time.
Right.
So, just to jump in there, Jeff, this is going to be a webinar that we will be watching, but it will be among the very first performances. And their hopes are that they're going to start, they'll start through a platform, and then it will go into the theater and be performed live. So we will, the performance that we see may be slightly different than the performance that someone else sees earlier, because the play is still.
Right, it's a unique theatrical experience. It's not like watching a film. So that's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of Zoom entertainment out there. And anyway, speaking of Zoom entertainment, let's move on to our panel about housing policy. I'm very excited to have brought these three folks together. And I have a little introductory spiel. But first, let me explain the format. Each speaker is going to talk for 10 minutes, and then we'll take questions from the floor. Recording Secretary Shannon Theus is going to run the stack. So if you have questions for our speakers, please type stack and the name of the speaker into the chat, and she will keep a list. And then we'll call on you to ask your questions after each of the three panelists has given their presentation. So here's my little introduction, which hopefully will frame this in a specific enough way that we can, really focus in on just a part of the housing thing, because it's so vast and complicated that a lot of times we just go all over the place and end up nowhere. Tonight, I've invited these three speakers so Culver City can best meet its RHNA goals. RHNA, pronounced RHNA, stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment. This is a projection of housing needs created periodically by SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. The newest edition covers October 2021 to October 2029. It calls for Culver City to add 3,341 units over this time, 1,108 of them very low income, 604 of them low income, 560 moderate income, and 1,069 moderate or above. These categories are defined as percentages of the county median household income. In LA County, that's just over 61,000. Very low income is half that, 30,500. Low income is below that in 80%, which goes up to 48,800. Moderate is up to 120% of median, which would be 73,200. And above moderate is anything above that. Using the federal standard that a household is rent burdened if more than 30% of its income goes to housing, that means the very low income units will need to rent for under $762.50 monthly, the low income ones for under $1,220, and the moderate ones for under $1,830. Unlike past RHNA goals, there will be consequences if these are not met. The state will reject city general plans whose housing elements do not project meeting the RHNA goals. The state attorney general can pursue financial penalties against non-compliant cities, and housing projects in those cities will be subject to ministerial approval, which means as long as a project is up to code, it can be built without further review. In other words, if the city does not honor these goals, it could lose a lot of state money and will definitely lose some power over development. The deadline for cities to appeal their allotments was last October 26th. Hearings on the appeals were held in January, and the final plan was adopted in March. The question now is not whether Culver City can or should meet these goals, but what combination of policies will accomplish this in harmony with our values. In his book, The Affordable City, Shane Phillips divides housing policy into stability, supply, and subsidy. While organizations, including the Nonprofit Housing Coalition and Housing is a Human Right, prefer protect, preserve, and produce. Whichever alliterative triad you use, Culver City has already taken major steps on the first term by passing our landmark renter protections. RHNA now mandates that we address the others. So the first panelist is former Mayor Meghan Sahli-Wells. Meghan was a crucial part of creating these RHNA goals, and I'll turn the mic over to her.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you to the club. I really appreciate the fact that you're having this conversation. It can be a really hard one, I know. And before I get into like the acronyms and the alphabet soup about RHNA, I want to kind of center this conversation in some, I think, some key places. And first of all, happy birthday to Tom Camarella, big number 75. That is a milestone. Happy birthday to you, dear.
Thank you.
I want to start by saying that housing is an issue where I have really evolved. Like I have personally evolved a lot on this issue. Like many people, I kind of saw development and certainly developers as inherently bad. Development was kind of like a four-letter word, right? That meant big buildings, greedy business people, cozy relationships with the people in power, traffic and parking nightmares, the whole enchilada. These are things that a lot of people think when they think about development. And in fact, after the plastic bag ban, the second big issue that got me into City Hall back in the day, way before I was elected, was around a development that was happening on my block that neighbors, including myself, opposed. So those were my beginning thoughts and feelings about housing. So like, why am I proudly and unabashedly pro-housing today? I think that's a little bit the story I want to talk about tonight. Did I go over to the dark side? No, I didn't. Did I start accepting developer money? No, I actually think that money can be a really corrupting influence in politics. And so I didn't and don't and won't take developer money. Was I corrupted by the power of my office? I really don't think so. I've actually become more progressive, not less progressive, over my 8 years in office. So what happened? I listened. And I learned some essential facts that I want to share with you tonight. Current housing policy is built on racism. The housing crisis has grown to atrocious levels because of our policies. The climate crisis and the housing crisis and structural racism are all linked. And before we get into more of the detail, because it can get confusing and very emotional, I want to really center us in people, center neighbors, center neighborhoods, because the heart of housing is less about the buildings and really about the people in them. And importantly, and increasingly, not the people in the buildings, but the people who are being left out of housing, which is creating our crisis. So I am going to share a couple slides for context. And maybe folks have seen this before. This is a redlining map of the city of Los Angeles, and Culver City is right in there. There's a big spot where you can see the Baldwin Hills oil fields, and Culver City is right next to it. Redlining is the definition of institutional racism. It's federal law that created redlining, and the effect and the goal was to rob people of color of wealth and opportunity. So I, looking at it from this goal, I went ahead and looked at my own neighborhood. I live right behind City Hall. And here's, this is a 1939 description of my neighborhood. Security map of Los Angeles County. It really very clearly talks about race. You can see in the middle, nationalities, Mexicans, no concentration, Negro, 0. Shifting or infiltration of more Mexicans are a threat, but not serious. This is my neighborhood. And when you go down and look at the description, it talks about things like never been a popular district. The number of Mexican families are part of its unattractiveness, as well as its proximity to oil wells. Overall, this neighborhood in Culver City gets a low yellow grade. And here's the kicker, and I think the key piece of this discussion. Did restrictions covering part of the area provide for minimum of 1,000 square feet dwellings and protect against racial hazards? In other words, the minimum lot size, these regulations that were in place at the time were protecting a low yellow grade neighborhood from being a red line, a red zone. And I think this is what I want us to never forget when we are talking about housing, when we're talking about current zoning rules, and how we got to that place today. And frankly, you know, I didn't start off my time in office. I didn't start off my time in this neighborhood thinking about any of these things, because it's not, you know, it's not the type of thing that many of us learn in school. But once you learn them and once you know them, you can't unsee or unknow what you've heard. So I'm going to kind of switch gears now that we've set the table with that context, and talk about the density conversations that we're having today. as some of you who were at the council meeting on Monday night and several over the past weeks, you've noticed the kind of high level of concern and fear of density. Density is bad, development is bad, it's going to do all these bad things to our neighborhoods. And we're never going to be able to park again. It's going to be bad for property values. And it's just these, greedy developers that are going to take over, and our neighborhoods are going to lose their character, et cetera. A lot of the talking points, it's kind of the same almost in every community. But believe it or not, we have a lot of successful multifamily density in Culver City already. Not enough for my taste, because I think we need absolutely more housing opportunities for our residents. But I want to kind of give you a little bit of a different image from what we think of when we have this density conversation. So maybe some of you will recognize this. This is Jackson, where Jackson and LaSalle meet between Culver Boulevard and Braddock Drive. And for those who are familiar with the neighborhood, that's where Jackson's Market is. And for those of you who've walked down those streets, you've seen, yourselves have seen examples, I think graceful examples of a pretty healthy and charming and livable mix of densities. You've got fourplexes, you've got multifamily, you've got apartments, you've got condos, you have single family, you have modest apartments. And LaSalle, when I hear people freaking out about density, I think about LaSalle. And I try to imagine all of these concerns about how bad density is and how bad multifamily housing is. And then I look at LaSalle and I'm like, I'm not seeing it. I am not seeing the problem. I do not think that LaSalle is some sort of hellhole because it has multifamily housing next to single family housing. And in the proposals that we've seen coming forward from organizations like Culver City for More Homes, from neighbors, from the council itself, this is what the density within our neighborhoods actually looks like. In other words, you can see it today. And so here, let me stop the screen share for a minute.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
You're over time. So if you could finish.
Am I? Oh, geez. Okay, sorry about that. It's like too busy setting the table. I didn't time myself. So this is just a little bit of context for the next pieces, which is, when you get into the nitty gritty of all of these policies of RENA and why it is that we're having a housing crisis. I think this is a slide from SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, which I represented the West Side Cities on. And it simply shows you how over the years, we are building less and less housing for more people added to our population. That's how you get the crisis. You get more people, you have more jobs, you don't have the housing, voila, homelessness, right? Voila, these insane prices. And that's how I started leading on this issue with, learning, getting more context, listening to families being displaced from Culver City because of the insane prices and the lack of building of housing. I actually became, transitioned from this person who was very negative towards development to somebody who was championing it on a regional level. This is from the LA Times, where we were passing RENA, where we decided it's more important to put housing where jobs and transit are than in far off places like the Inland Empire and out in the outskirts, creating sprawl. And it's very much a climate issue. And so this is my takeaway quote from that LA Times article. This is very much both about racism, it's also about climate. And I'm sorry to have gone over time, and we'll be able to answer questions later. Thank you.
Thanks. I wanted to have Meghan first because of her role in creating the RENA, and then I flipped a coin for the other two, just to be transparent. So next up is Elias Platte-Bermeo from Culver City for More Homes.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me just share my screen. Can you all see this? I'm seeing a nod from Jeff. Okay, I think that's my cue. First and foremost, Jeff, thank you for having me. Meghan, really great to see you again. And thank you for situating the conversation and kind of reminding us to always center people. I think that's super important for all of us to consider as we're talking about something like housing. And to everyone else on the call, most of whom I haven't met from the looks of it, really great to be here. My name's Elias Platte-Bermeo. I am a renter in Culver City. I grew up north, then came down to the area to go to school at UCLA, studied environmental studies and public policy, and then moved here after graduation. And I'm a volunteer with Culver City for More Homes, first and foremost, because I almost immediately fell in love with the city, but want to do what I can with my time and energy to tackle the housing problem that we're all facing here. So,
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Sure, sorry about that. So a little bit of intro on Culver City for More Homes for anyone who hasn't been introduced to our group. We are, first and foremost, a grassroots group of local residents and stakeholders. And I kind of just want to hold on that point. We are genuinely grassroots. I joined the group back in the fall when it was, just a couple folks on kind of semi-regular calls. And we've grown to include a wide array of residents and stakeholders. I've seen a lot online, alluding to us as a group as, funded by big tech or developers. I can assure you that that is not the case. We're all just, residents and stakeholders using our time. Few of us who have the means using, small amounts of money just to get communications materials out there. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to, bring about change in our community and capitalize on the opportunity presented by RENA and the housing element update to make that positive change. So before I get too deep, I kind of want to build on what Meghan was saying and talk a little bit about Culver City's pretty sordid history of housing policy. Culver City was initially marketed as a model little white city. Harry Culver openly embraced racially restrictive property deeds and covenants barring people of color from purchasing in Culver City. And then when it became illegal to explicitly restrict property purchases on the basis of race, our city embraced other policies like exclusionary zoning and other regulations like minimum lot sizes to intentionally exclude people on the basis of income, which was highly correlated with race. So today, oddly enough, some of those policies have gone largely unchanged. Culver City right now bans, just for context, on 70% of our residentially owned land, bans apartments and has allowed local obstructionism and bad policy to restrict home building. And this has been a contributing factor to Culver City becoming less racially and socioeconomically diverse than the rest of the county and our competitive market area. It's also one of the components of rising housing costs across our city, such that at this point, income needed to rent or own a home in Culver City exceeds the median household income. And it's also part of why we've got a growing housing jobs imbalance in Culver City. So for context, we've got substantially more jobs than homes in Culver City. And the rate at which jobs are growing in Culver City is much greater than the rate that we are producing new housing to allow people to live in our city. So without intervention, this is only going to become more pronounced. So that brings us to RHNA, the RHNA process, which Jeff gave some great context about, Meghan built on. I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds, but Culver City from Our Homes sees this as a huge opportunity to help remedy some of those injustices of this town's past and plan for smart, equitable growth in our city that really allows everyone to thrive. So before I get even deeper into some of the policies that we support, I kind of just want to take a moment and touch on first and foremost why all of this is so important, and say that there are tons of reasons why people, I think everyone on this call, should care about the issue of housing. I personally first got involved in all things housing from more of an environmental sustainability lens. I've seen all the studies, looked at all the science that says that infill development in cities, especially in high opportunity areas of metropolitan areas, is one of the most important things we can do to tackle climate change. We live in a high opportunity place with amenities and transit. So infill development here means people don't need to live far out where they're going to have to rely on cars and all of the emissions associated with that. But more housing in Culver City can also mean things like lower housing costs, more integrated neighborhoods, more people having greater access to good jobs and schools through living in a high resource area. That's been shown through a lot of data that growing up in a place like this has lifelong positive impacts. And there's tons more reasons. I could go on and on. And I want to make it really clear that what we're advocating for are policies that we think make sense for a place like Culver City that's whiter and wealthier than the rest of LA County. So these are not necessarily policies that are cookie cutter solutions that would be appropriate in all places everywhere, but we feel that they're the right policies for Culver City right now to be pursuing to help tackle our housing crisis. So to bring about all those kind of benefits from smarter, better housing policy in Culver City, our group is advocating essentially for policy that catalyzes new housing growth in our community, which is, like I said, job rich, transit rich, high opportunity, and then distributes housing for lower income households equitably across all neighborhoods, so that we're not just putting people on busy corridors where there are maybe environmental justice concerns, less green space, maybe more pollution, but instead bringing new neighbors into all of our neighborhoods. So what does that actually look like? How do we actually plan for smart housing growth? Part of the solution that our group is pushing, not the entire solution by any means, but a crucial part of it, is legalizing more homes and housing. So remember, right now, it's actually illegal to build anything but one home per lot on more than 70% of the land we've got zoned for homes. Some of the ways we can fix that are ending exclusionary zoning, allowing multiple units by right on all of our home zoned parcels. We can allow housing in commercially zoned areas, and we can make homes easier to build and reduce current barriers to housing. So that might look something like eliminating parking minimums that increase costs of building housing, re-examining setback requirements, providing off-the-shelf ADU designs that are automatically approved, eliminating other barriers, and streamlining the approval process of certain types of housing. We also want to make homes easier. Oops, let's see, am I freezing? Sorry, I'm seeing my video cut out. Still good? Awesome, seeing some thumbs up there. But so that covers kind of the first part of what we're advocating, but we fully recognize that we can't stop there. These policies alone, if we're looking at the RHNA numbers, don't give us the levels of affordable housing that we want to see and that we're tasked with meeting. So, enabling increased market rate housing in areas like ours has been shown to promote neighborhood level affordability and relieve some of the displacement pressure in surrounding neighborhoods. But we see a need to go much further and be kind of much more intentional in our affordability policies. So let's see. we want to aggressively enable and fund affordable housing. So if anyone was on the council meeting on Monday, they talked about a 100% affordable housing overlay zone. This is something that we're absolutely in favor of. This would incentivize development of true permanent affordable housing in neighborhoods where it otherwise might not be feasible, allow affordable housing developers to gain an edge on market rate developers that generally have more buying power. And then we're also in favor of lots of the policies outlined in the National Homes Guarantee, like additional social housing, community land trusts, vacancy taxes, and really we're open to all different sorts of creative, aggressive mechanisms to increase Culver City's supply of true affordable housing. And I know tonight we're focusing primarily on housing supply, but I think it's also important to point out that our group wants to do things like strengthen renters' rights to prevent displacement in our communities. And at the end of the day, Meghan touched on this, but all of these policies can promote sort of gentle density, what's often called missing middle housing, that fits with the scale of our city, but also allows us to increase the supply of housing in our city and allow us to hit our affordable housing targets and then equitably distribute housing throughout our neighborhoods. So in my last couple moments, Jeff, if I've got some time, I just want to drive home the point that at the core of Culver City from Our Homes is an understanding that we need all sorts of solutions to increase not just overall supply of housing, but the right kinds of housing to meet and maybe even exceed our RENIT targets. We can't just end exclusionary zoning, although that's important. We can't just put our focus into certain types of affordable housing. We think we've got to transform our land use policy so that supply of housing in our opportunity-rich area can increase, and so that we can equitably distribute housing throughout all of our city. And then we think we've got to have those strong affordability measures. That's a crucial part of the housing justice puzzle that we're espousing. So folks in our group come from pretty different backgrounds and perspectives. Some of us are older, some of us are younger, some of us are renters, some of us are homeowners, but we all see the need for change. And I think I can speak for the group and say that we're pretty encouraged by the fact that our local leaders are already recognizing this opportunity and have taken some steps that we're asking for. But our group is all about keeping the pressure on so we don't let this opportunity slip by and allow all of these problems that come with the housing crisis to compound. So I'll stop there. I know that was quick, a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone's got about our group or specific policies that we're pushing for. Thank you.
Elias, so yeah, this is a good time for me to remind you all that if you want to ask questions of any of the presenters, please put STAC and the presenter's name in the comments, and then we'll call on people after our third panelist, who is Mark Lipman, longtime member of this club and a very strong voice for housing justice in Culver City, vice chair of the Commission on Homelessness. Mark, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. I wanted to start off by sharing intention with you. It's actually a small miracle that I'm sitting on this panel tonight. So I want to thank Jeff and the whole club for giving me this platform to speak. You see, I come directly from the homeless community. Even when I've been housed, including right now, it has always been unstable, conditional, and situational. Very rarely does someone with my perspective get a seat at the table. And it's only because I want to end homelessness, know how to do it, and believe it can be done that I even stepped into this community conversation 3 years ago to begin with. So that is my motivation. I'm not looking for the red solution or the blue solution, the upzoning solution or the no upzoning solution. I'm looking for the best solution for Culver City. To do that, sometimes we need to take a step back and look at this from a different angle. Recently, I attended an AD 54 candidate debate on housing and homelessness. And the question of zoning and R1s in particular was brought up. And every last candidate, every single one of them, the person that you voted for, said that upzoning R1s is dubious at best and will most likely result in a loss of affordable housing. Why is this important? Well, because everyone in the upzoning camp is pointing to RHNA as the reason why we have to upzone. And their entire argument is based upon the presumption that this will provide us with more affordable housing, which I'm sorry to say is just one of a slew of talking points coming out of Amazon packaged as progressive, because that and all the other big tech companies are the money behind groups like California YIMBY and Abundant Housing LA, where all our friends are getting their information. So how does RHNA play a role in this? Well, no one, not a single person, believes that we will not reach our RHNA market rate goals. We only proponents say is that we need affordable housing, and that is why we need to upzone. And that is why they point to RHNA constantly, saying that we need 3,300 new units. But what they fail to mention is how we are going to get the other 2,200 moderate, low, and very low income units. While homeless people, also please take note that there are no units slated for extremely low or no income tenants, while homeless people are the ones they keep pointing to as the reason why we need to keep building more. Everything they propose is just more giveaways to market rate developers, suggesting that somehow those affordable units will just trickle down to us. Allow me to explain using R1 zones as an example. What we are told is that we need to upzone in order to get more affordable units. That if we allow 4 units per lot, that fourth one will be affordable. Now, as they will point out, we already allow under state law 3 units on every R1 lot, that every homeowner has the right today to have the house, an ADU, and JADU under our current zoning laws. So why not just add one more, they say, and build those nice apartments we saw tonight that were built in the 70s, they say. Well, I'll tell you why not. Because they don't want to just add one more unit and build that. What they want to build are 4 $2 million plus townhomes where your home sits today. There's even talk right now about making that 6 townhomes on 1 plot of land for tech executives. And they keep saying that it's worth it to get that one affordable unit, that we need more housing for the rich so we don't displace Black people in other communities. So much for talking points of wanting to bring more ADU on your property. You currently have 3 affordable units. The 2 units that you're renting will always be the lowest units that you're going to find in the area. And that likewise helps a struggling homeowner stay in their home and community. Those are our good mom and pop landlords, and we need to look out for them. They are going to be our greatest source of truly affordable housing and our partners in the solution. Our ADU grants and landlord incentive programs haven't even fully launched yet. These are our best short and medium-term options we have as current policy exists to attain new affordable housing. Currently, we have $2.5 million slated in next year's budget to help with the construction of 90 new covenanted affordable ADUs in R1 zones, including housing for people who are homeless. And they're reminding that from the get-go. But it's even worse than that. If the upzoning proponents get their way, their plan ultimately relies on you having to sell your property to one of these big developers who will outbid a teacher every single time. So for every one of these existing homeowners that they successfully move out of Culver City, we're losing 3 affordable units. We start at a -3. So after they go and build 4 vertical towers on every plot of land, cutting off sunlight, air, and privacy to their neighbors, they start squeezing the entire block until you feel compelled to sell and leave. Then all we have are these $2 million plus condos squeezed together on a vertical line and one undefined affordable unit, giving us a net loss of 2 affordable units. And this is how they suggest we meet our RHNA affordable housing mandate. Their counter argument is that they'll just build more of these mansions instead. Again, their plan depends on you to sell and leave or die. But there are fatal flaws in this argument as well. First, they forget their own words. You can already build 3 units by right. You just can't build it to the sky, and that's a good thing. Did you know that 1/3 of all homeowners in Culver City make less than $75,000 a year? That's roughly 3,300 households. Gee, where did I hear that number before? These are our long-term, house-rich, cash-poor residents, those who may just be hanging on and one emergency away from being financially driven out of the community and the first target for speculators with suitcases full of cash. Did you also know that our housing department has developed a very generous set of landlord incentives to help stabilize those landlords who are willing to work with us to house low and very low income people, even homeless people in our community? Shared housing and roommate models for housing can also help us reach our housing goals and shore up the financial stability of our local residents much more cost effectively than can be attained by turning our city over to these big outside investment developers who only serve to increase the economic and racial disparity in our community. There are also many solutions for housing, and we have only scratched the surface of it. One place where we do overlap is an 100% affordable overlay zone. Instead of upzoning, could put the brakes on these Wall Street investors by giving them no variances and no bonuses at all. But if you want to build a truly 100% affordable project for the people who need the housing the most, then you get all the help you need. But you can't do both. You can't do a 100% affordable overlay zone and upzone too, because that gives the developers everything they want. This right here is the foundation for our own community land trust, land banking and community land trust financed through a public bank like the one the city of Los Angeles is forming, which Culver City could buy into and get a seat on the board of directors, could be a permanent source of self-funding for community-led, low-impact housing projects where we buy properties for sale in order to create low-cost housing we need, which in turn helps prevent the mansionization of our neighborhoods. Moreover, if we stop giving $500,000 subsidies to developers per door and turn that money back to self-investing into our existing community, we can get 5 to 10 times the amount of affordable housing at the same price. And since other speakers have focused so much on race, if we really want to talk progressive and talk about racial restorative housing justice through a community land trust model, we could also set up our own rent-to-own home ownership programs to help low-income people of color become homeowners in our community. Another consideration we must make is the very real vacancy rates that exist, averaging 4 times as many vacant housing units as people who are homeless. There are currently 1.2 vacant units in California. I'm wrapping up. 251,000 plus vacant housing units in LA County, 93,000 vacant units in the city of Los Angeles, and 830 vacant units in Culver City at any given time, according to the city's own official documents. Yet, we are now hearing some opponents chanting vacancy truther at those of us who would bring in vacancy rates into the conversation, as if that level of name calling and gaslighting is actually a counter argument. Some of you may have heard that I've spoken about a direct housing program to end homelessness. This program, as designed, would make use of whatever housing is currently available on the market, and by the city holding a master lease, the person needing the housing has a safe place to live, while the landlord is guaranteed a stable rent, guaranteed repairs, and other already established incentives, and a dedicated caseworker who ensures that the participants have a path towards success. I would love at another time to give you a full presentation on Housing First, what it really is, and how it is designed to be properly implemented. Done correctly, we could end homelessness very quickly if we wanted to, and at a far lower cost than what we are currently spending simply to prolong the problem. Thank you so much.
Your voice on the subject, but yes, thank you. So, our recording secretary Shannon has been keeping track of the stack. Shannon, how many questions do we have?
So right now stack is growing. Can you hear me? Am I seeing?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Right now stack is growing. So far, right now we have 17 recorded, and I see a couple of stacks getting added to that. But
Okay.
how do you want to divide the stack? Because people are saying, like, do you want it to be by speaker?
My hope with people putting in the names for the speakers is that we could sort of rotate them around,
Okay.
so that everyone gets, an equal amount of time to, to answer questions. And
Okay.
I'd like to suggest that we spend 15 minutes taking questions so we don't go too far into the second hour.
So that's a reminder to our friends who are asking questions to please ask questions. I'm going to put a 2-minute time limit for each person who's speaking. That is our club limit. But also, so ask a question and let it go. And I'll interrupt. I'll try to be diplomatic, but I'll interrupt at the 2-minute point. So let me know which speaker you want to address first.
Well, let's start with Elias, since we just heard from Mark and Megan got to go first.
Tom Camarella is the first for Elias.
Looking at this stuff, it certainly looks like between the ADUs and the JADUs, and the fact that we can put 2 more on an R1 already, I'm still trying to figure out why this is cost effective. To get 1 unit for 500,000 on the property versus 25,000 maybe to someone to try to build an ADU or a JADU. I just think we should be exploring more things other than just upzoning. I think we really need to study this more, and I do appreciate Mark's. I read the materials, and there are different ways and better ways to do it. Thank you.
Tom, was that a question?
Was that a question?
Oh, the question is it still that we can get $25,000 help for each R1 property if they wanted to make an ADU or a JADU?
I'll start off by saying I agree with you that that is part of the solution, is not the only solution. In our opinion, ADUs are absolutely a component of solving the housing crisis. In some areas, for some people, that makes complete sense and can be economically effective and feasible. But when we're talking about an issue like housing, an ADU, which is a lot of times smaller, more compact than, a multi-bedroom home, that cannot be the basis of how we are tackling the housing crisis. It can't be the only tool in our toolbox. So that is an effective solution in certain scenarios, but we can't say that, we are only going to build that type of housing and commit all of our energy to making that happen. That excludes, bigger families, folks who need multiple bedrooms, more, home size. I think there is a certain type of person for whom an ADU is a perfect solution, but housing is not, a one solution issue. That is a tool in the toolkit that we are absolutely in support of. So I agree with you on that fundamental point. I just don't think it is where we should be putting the entirety of our energy.
Well, we could also have banks, our own banks, and we can control what happens. So
I love comments, but we're going to have to limit back and forth in order to get through everyone's, unfortunately. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Did he satisfy your question, Tom?
That's it. I'm fine.
So,
I wanted Mark to talk on it, but okay.
Would you like to be put on stack for Mark to see if we can get to you?
No.
Okay, so Jeff, who would you like to have ask the next or answer the next question?
Let's go to Megan and then to Mark and then rotate until we run out of time.
The first one for Megan is Kimberly Ferguson. Kimberly, are you around? We're gonna.
Here I am. Sorry. Hello, Megan. You did a great job. There's a couple of things. Just because, and I when I first moved here and I read my deed, I was appalled to find that in fact it did have all those specific things like certain type of people who could buy. And so this is going to be two different types of questions. But the question is, I understand that it was certainly originally based on a racist intent, but that doesn't mean that we are all now still under the same racist moniker, though, is it? Do you believe that all of us who have single family homes have to be racist because we want a single family home?
Thank you for asking that question, Kimberly. Are you familiar with the term systemic racism?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, if you have a single family home, therefore you are racist, right? That's not what any of us are saying. What we're saying is that the system, on the foundation on which our cities were planned and our homes were built and funded or not funded, where they're located, how big they can be, if they have multiple stories or not, are they next to the town dump, are they next to the oil field? All of those things were intentionally race-based from the beginning, fruit of the poison tree. And what's happened over the years is that type of zoning has continued through time. Again, we're not saying you're racist because you live or bought a certain type of home. No.
But it hasn't.
But it is, I'm sorry, but the problem is that our zoning is still based on these racist principles. Furthermore, with the redlining, you can argue with the academics. There are a lot of smarter people than me that have done deep study on this, and please don't just take my word for it, and please do research because there's plenty of. But the redlining maps, the deeds is something you talked about. There was one, I believe, on my house too. the racial covenants. But the redlining map that I showed earlier, that describes who's getting home loans and who's not. And that's another point where the racism, sorry, Kimberly, please let me answer.
But your answer.
That's another piece.
Sorry, Kimberly, we're not having back and forth. So she's going to answer the question and then we're going to move on. If you're not satisfied with the answer, Kimberly, you can put your name back in stack. If you're not satisfied, you can go back and stack, but this isn't back and forth.
The redlining that is how they're doing home loans, right? And home loans is generational wealth. When your people are deprived home loans by the federal government, upon which these redlining maps were based, you deprive generations of that homeownership wealth, which completely correlates with the racism and the disparities that we see to this day in housing. If you look at the majority of Black and brown residents in Culver City are renters. And a lot of that is because of this history, because the federal government said, no, you do not get to live in these neighborhoods. You do not get to have federal loans, whereas white families did. That's how I've seen in the chat, people are saying, hey, racism in the past, it's not translated today, but it very much comes to light today. And there is just a ton of study around it. And I would encourage everybody to educate themselves on it.
Thank you, Megan. Jeff, can you tell me who's next on the stack?
Whoever has a question for Mark.
Okay, so I'm going to call that. And before I do, I'm just going to step in because I have the mic. I'm going to ask people to have sportsmanship right now and to be civil. We are a community of friends who are trying to make good things happen. And if you disagree, that's fine, but you need to find a way to keep emotionality out of it, please. And I'm just going to say this as an obviously Black person. I'm viewing everything, right? I'm going to qualify what's racist, people. And so please try to be civil. So a lot of times people, as long as we're civil, that's fine. So the first person in our stack from Mark is James Altrunner. James, I don't know who you are, so you're going to have to present yourself.
Hi, sorry, yes, hi, good evening. But my question was for Elias. I thought I'd put in, yeah.
So Daniel
Should
Young.
I ask it now or?
No, we'll go to Daniel Young. A couple people in front of you, so if you don't mind waiting your turn, Mark to speak. So if Daniel Young is ready for his question to Mark.
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to say that I'm sympathetic to a lot of the things that Mark is saying, especially when it comes to the idea of new market housing developments. They're not going to be affordable either. But you said that somehow now the situation is that, we have these like good and pop landlords and that somehow they're offering affordable rents. Generally speaking, the rents in Culver City across the board are not affordable, no matter who's offering the housing. So I'm just curious where you got that idea from, and what would be the difference between, small mom and pop unaffordable or, large developer unaffordable rent.
Sure. Understand that we are also funding right now in our next budget, $2.5 million for 90 affordable ADUs. We have money that's working into our budget for landlord incentives to partner with landlords to be able to get lower income people and people who are homeless into housing. So those incentives are there, and those 90 units are coveted units at all three income levels. We have moderate, we have low and very low, and then we have homeless in the money that we're currently looking to invest. So this is how we guarantee those lower rents. And I also want to agree with Elijah, I hope I got your name right, that we do need a wealth of solutions. I'm not saying it's just ADUs. That is a piece of the puzzle, but it's a necessary piece of the puzzle because we do have a lot of single people who are looking for housing too. You know, I currently live in a shared housing program. And just for full transparency, I might as well just put this out here now. On Christmas Eve, I was made homeless. And I was evicted out of an R1 zone. And I went through Project 50. And the only reason I got rehoused is because A, I knew who to call, and B, I'm a white man. That's it. Because in the system, a white man is acceptable to stand up for his rights. And when they wanted to rehouse me in South Central, and they wanted to rehouse me in Compton and Downey, I had to go to the ACLU, to the National Lawyers Guild, threatening with a class action lawsuit. I had to get Holly Mitchell's office involved to put pressure on them, to force them to keep me housed in my existing community. And you know where I got rehoused? With a good mom and pop landlord. I live in shared housing with my landlord, and this is uncounted housing that we have today in our community, in our R1 zones. So there are lots of options out there, but it's not the only option. One of the programs that I'm highly in support of is 100% affordable overlay zone, but this is contradictory to any type of upzoning, because what happens if you do 100% overlay and upzoning? Well, the developers just get what they want, so it cuts the legs out of the affordable overlay zone. But just for the citywide, every zone, 100% affordable overlay, then we can have a community land trust where we work through the public bank to create our own housing. And the types of housing that Meghan was showing tonight, the beautiful fourplexes and stuff that we have, nice stuff that was built in the 70s that the developers won't build today, we can build that. And that I'm just fine with, of putting that type of housing back into our community, or courtyard housing, or lower scale that doesn't destroy the feel of our community. Because guess what? Poor people deserve to live in good communities too. They don't have to be all stacked together in these big apartment blocks. So let's actually reimagine how we create our city, because this is the only time we get to do it. Once we upzone, it's done, and the corporations take over, and we have no more say in our community. So let's think about how we can have creative solutions that puts public control of what our future is going to be back into the community's hands. That's what I'm advocating for.
That seems like a great place to stop. Unfortunately, it's 8:10 now, and we do have some business to conduct in the second hour of our meeting. I want to thank all three of the panelists for your, thoughtful and passionate comments, and everyone who had questions. The questions we didn't get to, I am sure this will not be the last time these issues come up. I know the City Council, of course, is going to take up exclusionary zoning on June 14th, and there's always social media. So,
President?
yes, Kareem.
Do you think follow up after the business?
We'll see. I feel like based on the last meeting, I feel like there's a strong motivation for people to wrap up at 9, that we're all kind of, zoomed out, and many of us have like jobs that we need to actually leave the house to go back to. But we'll see. But we do allow 1 hour for programs, and we've done over an hour on this. So I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Okay, if I'm going to stop the recording.
I do see Suzanne's hand raised.